Welcome Between the Whistles. I'm your host, Joe Chapp, and today we're going to be talking about the Detroit Tigers. The Detroit Tigers are on a 9-game losing streak. And when you look at this team and you look at this fan base, obviously there's apathy that will eventually sit in with this team because obviously the Tigers are not watchable. They are not a good team at all. And if we're going to be totally, brutally, and concisely honest, they're not even close to a competitive product anytime soon. So, what Scott Harris has to do moving forward. First of all, obviously, you would love to get rid of the contract that is Javier Baez. You're gonna get rid of the Miguel Cabrera contract, but I think you're eventually gonna have a guy who is just as useless as a guy who was retiring to a guy who is getting paid a bunch of money to be your star shortstop who is striking out at an alarming rate. And if you look at the Detroit Tigers, it's not AJ Hinch's fault. It's not Scott Harris's fault. Back in a couple years ago, I told you that Al Avila screwed this team up. He screwed it up. The farm system isn't good enough. It was very top loaded. And you got to understand when you look at the Tigers or you look at any Major League Baseball system, you're always going to have the guys that aren't as good as they assume to be, right? So you like a guy like Riley Green, like we all expected him to be pretty good. He might be pretty good. Spencer Torkelson might be pretty good. You drafted him number 1 overall, so you're thinking he'll be a superstar like Goldschmidt, or maybe he's a like a Goldschmidt, like a Austin Riley, like a Matt Olson, Freddie Freeman, someone like that. It doesn't appear like that. Now, you have to absolutely nail the draft. You have to get help from the later rounds. You have to get help from, the international free agents. It's very crucial for Scott Harris because obviously the first year he wanted to see what he has. I think after this first year is over with, I think he's going to really want to, redo some things because when you look at this team moving forward, they're nowhere near competitive. They got a long way to go. They are in a horrible division. They can get better next year. But ultimately, to win World Series, to win AL Centrals, to win, obviously AL Central is probably the easiest path to that has the least resistance, to be honest. But when you look at winning the American League, winning a World Series, that's a far, far cry away. When you look at the top teams, they have probably 5 to 6 bats that are at a great level. When you look at this Tigers team, they don't have one. You take out Riley Green from this team, and you see exactly what comes to fruition. They're not a good team. They struggle offensively. The bullpen, which was their, was probably their best unit, hasn't been playing that great, pitching that great. And obviously, you're going to get Casey Mize back. You're going to get Tarik Skubal back, and you're hopefully that maybe those guys will help you. Obviously, they will because they're great. They're going to be good players. I like Tarik Skubal a little more than Casey Mize, but you look at guys like Colt Keith that are in the in Double-A. You look at a guy like Justin Henry Malloy. I mean, those guys are pretty. They're not as close as you think they are. They're pretty far away at this point. So it's going to be interesting to see how Scott Harris handles this because I think that he is going through a time as a first-year general manager where he's really getting put to the forefront. And I kind of hiking this back to what Brad Holmes did with the Detroit Lions. But let's be honest, and if you're a fan of the Tigers, if you're a fan of all Detroit sports teams, I got to remind you this because I tell everybody this because it is the most important thing to realize. It is easier to rebuild in the Major League Baseball. I mean, not Major League Baseball. It's easier to rebuild in the NFL, in the NBA because the talent that's coming out, usually you could really stockpile a lot of them. Compared to the NHL and the Major League Baseball where you have, these prospects come in, they got to learn the game and it's going to take a little bit of time to get it going. And we see what's happening with Stevie Y. You know, he's going into he's going into a critical time in his general manager tenure with the Detroit Red Wings, and he's needed the time. You know, you build these foundations with your prospects. You hope your prospects become good players at the major league level, at the NHL level, and that's how you build it as a team. So this is a critical year for Scott Harris because obviously he has come to know what exactly this team needs moving forward. So we're gonna find out because this is not good baseball and it is pretty dreadful to watch. What do you think is wrong with the Detroit Tigers? Let me know below in the comments and I will answer you accordingly.